very visible.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know why my siblings always find a way to refresh and bring up memories I was able to block out. But
Me posing in the
Michelle
nude? No,
doesn't
I'm
do
just kidding.
Michelle doesn't
Well,
do.
you've probably seen them.
I was I was never an altar boy, but what the heck happened in our church?
Politically, you know, I tend to lean like maybe extreme alt center, which sounds odd, but really that's where conspiracy theorists live because I'm paranoid of both sides. But um, I'm not really like a bunker storing Republican, and I'm not racist enough to be Democrat. The whole KKK thing and Civil War kind of weirds me out. Religiously, I'm a Catholic, so I don't know, Palmer and Brian, you know our town, but you may not know all of the little scandals that have gone down. Pretty much all the Catholic scandals in the country have gone down in our town and in our parish. You know, priest gets possessed and kills a nun. That's our town. Go Panthers. Um, the worst pedophile priest scandal happened at our church with my friends, yours too, Brian, as you know. And people still today ask me, how can you still be Catholic? And I'm like, well, I didn't rape no altar boys, so what's that have to do with me? The devil's got to get out. You know, this guy's got to get out. The priest's got to get out if the ones that are a problem. I'm staying in the Catholic faith. I love my faith. I love the people that I've met there. When David was in the hospital, no one was coming. No one was coming to visit. A month and a half we were there. Pastor would come. The priest would come. Deacon would come. My son's godparents come. That's what I see as the church. They were there when we're alone. And so whatever goes on with the scandal of the Catholic Church, I feel very distant from it. So politics, as you know, on this show, we're going to have a rule. If I bring up politics, we can talk about it. Religion, brought up, we can talk about it. If our guest does bring it up, we'll talk about it. But we're not going to bring it up unless they do. So I'm opening that can of worms for you if you want. If I talk about my son, David, I got to talk about my wife, Annetta. And I have a lot of things I could say about her, but this backstory would go really, really long. But the first week I met her was definitely the happiest time of my life. Amazing. The wedding paled in comparison. I mean, that week was like all my answers, or all questions were answered at that point. Give me an idea too before I say that. We never had our first argument for 7 to 8 years after knowing each other. Not even one argument. We didn't have kids for 3 years. Our first marriage, after we got married. And the first argument was how much water to give a handicapped kid. You know, because we both cared very much about it and got a hand. But this is my wife, as best I can say it. God Chooses Mom for a Disabled Child by Irma Bombeck. Did you ever wonder how mothers of handicapped children are chosen? Somehow I visualize God hovering over earth, selecting his instruments for propagation with great care and deliberation. As he observes, he instructs his angels to make notes in a giant ledger. Armstrong, Beth, son, patron saint, Matthew, Forrest, Marjorie, daughter, patron saint Cecilia. Rudledge, Carrie, twins, patron saint. Give her Gerard, he's used to profanity. Finally, he passes a name to an angel and smiles. Give her a handicapped child. The angel is curious. Why this one, God? She's so happy. Exactly, smiles God. Could I give a handicapped child to a mother who does not know laughter? That would be cruel. But has she patience? That's the angel. I don't want her to have too much patience, or she will drown in a sea of pity and despair. Once the shock and resentment wears off, she'll handle it. I watched her today. She has that feeling of self and independence. She'll have to teach the child to live in her world, and that's not going to be easy. But Lord, I don't think she even believes in you. God smiles. No matter, I can fix that. This one is perfect. She has just enough selfishness. The angel gasps. Selfishness, is that a virtue? God nods. If she can't separate herself from the child occasionally, she'll never survive. Yes, there is a woman I will bless with a child less than perfect. She doesn't realize it yet, but she is to be envied. She will never take for granted a spoken word. She will never consider a step ordinary. When her child says mama for the first time, she will be present at a miracle and know it. When she describes a tree or a sunset to her blind child, she will see it as few people ever see my creations. I will permit her to see clearly the things I see, ignorance, cruelty, prejudice, and allow her to rise above them. She will never be alone. I'll be at her side every minute of every day of her life because she is doing my work as surely as she is here by my side. And what about her patron saint? Asked the angel, his pen poised in the air. God smiles. A mirror will suffice. And that's my wife. And I win. Real tear. So I guess why we left the parish. Well, and everyone helping, it's kind of hard to leave. Had nothing to do with them. I gotta go back when I was a teenager. I was in sports all my life. Didn't do drugs in high school. Had a single beer at a party at my first concert performance, with Todd Cronin and John Day at the high school battle of bands. So I pretty much didn't drink, didn't smoke in high school. Was a clean kid. 14, I'm at a soccer game. It's raining. It's cold. And my fingers start to turn white, one knuckle at a time. Both hands. Like complete white. All the blood was leaving. And I went to the sideline, get warmed up, and blood came back and didn't think much of it. And a year later at a track meet, it's cold, rainy, and it starts again. My parents take me to the doctor, and they say it's Raynaud's syndrome. It's nothing to worry about. Kind of common enough that we know about it. No big deal, they said. And then there's like this window of temperature and rainy conditions. I don't know why, probably because raindrops challenge the temperature settings of the body because it's cold here, warm here, but cold, so kind of somehow that conditions between temperature 50s, 60s would kick it in. But it was never really a big deal. It didn't slow me down at all. In the late 20s, Palmer, I was out there living in San Francisco and living in sin with a chick who, not churchgoer, she's more into, tarot cards and that. And my prayer life was pretty much in a crisis. Now, Palmer, you remember, in San Fran, the temperature is always 50 to 60 degrees. Always mist, fog in the air. It's the ideal circumstances for a lot of problems in this way. But I didn't know that at the time. But I go to join an indoor soccer game. Some friends at work. And I get in a field, my first run to the ball. My eyes go black, and I go down. And then I come to, the guys help me off the sideline. I go grab some water on the sideline, going, what the heck was that? And then all of a sudden, my shoulder just comes out of the socket, slides right on out, and goes numb instantly. And I go up to the concession stand. And I'm like, what the heck's that? No pain at all, just numbness, can't move my fingers. Good concession, say, I don't know, maybe I'm having a stroke or heart attack or something. Could you call 911? And they're like, you look fine. I go, I know, but I can't feel my arm. They came and they saw my shoulder was dislocated, and they took me to ER and put it back in. They said, well, you need to go find out why you fell. We could put the shoulder in, but that's the only thing. So this gets pretty weird, but I got a good, I did eventually get a diagnosis, so I'll get to where I'm going. So Christmas Eve, I'm like, well, it's Christmas Eve. Maybe I should go to church. Girlfriend's in the other room. Like, she's not going to want to go. I'll just go play some music in the other room. Playing some music, keyboard and that, and all of a sudden my right leg starts dislocating, falling right out of my socket. I hold on to it, lay down on the ground and hold it. And I call her, and she comes in, I'm holding it, and then just like a light switch, it tightened back up. And I go, what the heck was that? The next day, go to same thing, Christmas Day, same situation. She's in the other room. I go to play some music. I was composing, I think. Left leg started coming out of the socket. I lay back down, call her in after a few minutes. It's a stressful feeling to feel something like that just slide out. Like just the ligaments just went flaccid or something. And didn't think anything of it. Well, I did think of something of it. It was weird. But next day after it went away, I'm thinking, okay, well, could be, maybe it's my imagination. I mean, the shoulder did come out. That was evident. It was out for 4 hours before they were able to get back in. But I said, going to work the next day. Go to work the next day. And I'm at the desk, and all of a sudden, blackout. Down I go at my desk. Start to come to, I call my boss, she's in the next cubicle. She comes over, and I couldn't get up. That time I had no strength and could barely formulate a sentence. So they called 911, took me in, do all the tests, no stroke, no heart attack, nothing, a little dehydrated, but nothing. And then it progressed from there. For the next 6 weeks, everything started getting worse and worse and worse. Every time I poop, it'd come out as black liquid. I mean, just oil. I lost all weight, 20 pounds, which isn't bad. I want to lose 20 pounds, but it was really a short amount of time. Difficulty walking, and I was going to see all sorts of doctors and neurologists and so on and so forth. Finally, there was a neurologist, and something did finally show up on one of the tests, and it was an MRI, and they saw that the ligaments in my neck were calcifying. So this happens when there's instability of the ligaments, and they'll just calcify as like last-ditch effort to hold on to everything. She's like, this is not the cause of the issues. What she's seeing in the calcification is a result. There's no way it could be causing all of the other things. I didn't stick around to find out, and the reason is because, as you can imagine, eventually this is going to go to your brain, and it did. So, kind of hard to keep your brain in straight when this stuff is going on. But like I said, I do know what the diagnosis is. So kind of like you think, what's going on? It's the nerves, right? No, there's no nerves in the ligaments and the chemicals, right? No. What else? Just think. What else is in the brain besides nerves, chemicals, and blood? What else is up there? Because all those appeared perfectly fine. There's not ligaments in the brain, so I'll get to it. They didn't know what it was either, if you don't know what it is. But across the street from my girlfriend's apartment, there was a church. And I'd always hear the church bells ringing. And I want to go across, I want to go to church. Always too busy and things didn't work out. But there was these words, there's a clock, and there was these words right beneath it. And the last day I was in San Francisco, I walked outside, I was going to go to work. And I said, I'm going to go see what those words are. And I read it. It said, son, observe the time and fly from evil. And so I did. Mine was going, pretty much health was going. So I took everything. except for clothes on my back and briefcase, and left my job, roommates. I know to everyone's frustration and confusion, but I was a sinking ship, and I was sinking fast, and I knew it was getting worse. Barely could even think by that time. So, through all the physical signs, history, and symptoms, they were always there from my childhood. When it came to the diagnostic criteria, it should have been known. The problem is, this is what I have is very rare, and not everyone knows about it. And I'll tell you what it is, but it's very clear diagnostics. There is a society for it, and I'll get into it because I want to get some other things first. The spiritual aspects of what was going on in my head and the mind too. So I believe I'm a mind, body, and spirit. So it's breakdown of faith, breakdown of the spirit, breakdown of the body, breakdown of the mind. I think they all go, and they can all be used to heal each other too. I believe that. But I needed, in my mind, I needed to take care of the spiritual first. And the reason is because there was some things that happen. Like if you give somebody a nerve, something to shut down a certain part of your brain, a medicine to do this, and that's not the actual problem, worse things are going to happen. Like a doc gives you a med who has a side effect of suicide. All right. So if you appear paranoid, then there's part of the brain that's involved with self-preservation. And if you shut those nerves down when they're perfectly fine, then you're going to go, like if you're 100%, 150% hyperactive, life preservation, and you shut it down, it's back to by 50%, you shut down and you're now at let's say, 100% or 75%, it's fine, it's good. But if that part's functioning normal, the outward appearance is not normal, but that part of the brain, and you shut it down, you go from self-preservation to self-harm. And there's enough lawsuits with this medicine that it's a big concern. That is what happened to me. Took this medicine. I was not suicidal before that at all. Took this medicine. I thought, hey, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to go to confession to the priest, go home and kill myself. Very casual. That's the thinking that went on with the brain. It was sudden. I never wanted it since once I got off the medicine. But that is what happens. And for those who want to know, at least in my case, suicides do go to hell. But I realized after that happened, it's no longer a health issue. I got a spiritual problem. And so, obviously, if you have your encounter with the devil, you better follow up with a priest very quickly. And I did. And I learned a lot. For 3.5 years, it was focus on my faith. Get some faith on anything. I went to, I don't know what they're called, not Buddhist temples, but with Tibetan Dalais there to talk, and a lot of wisdom, and I was very fascinated. Went to a lot of different churches, but really the one I connected back with that was this is going to be the strongest in my life was the Catholic Church. So I went and spoke with the priest. As the spirituality started to come under control, I needed to take care of the mind, and I found that math was the medicine for that. Because math doesn't lie, it doesn't change. You put down an equation, it's going to be there when you get back. If your brain's not functioning properly, you can make it stronger with math because it's always going to be concrete. Music didn't work. Music didn't help me. I love playing music, and I did at the time, but it never helped, and many times it made it worse because it was my creativity going in too many directions. Math was really neat, and I think that is really what healed my mind. I was always good at math, but I had a use for it now. That was my medicine. And I just said to myself, I got a big problem, and I need to try to solve a math problem that's bigger than my problem if I'm going to actually surpass that. So Riemann hypothesis seemed a good option for that. Took me 17 years. I called Greg and Denny, the mathematicians. I say, help me with this problem. I think I got it. And I enjoyed that so much. We did it with the Birch-Swinnerton-Dyer conjecture. And I feel good about that one too. But math healed my mind. What damaged it, I wasn't sure yet. The last was the health. What was going on? I went through a total of 6 dislocations that landed me in the ER. Many went back in and I could take care of it. Some I couldn't get them back in. So I'd reach my arm in the air, dislocate. Wake up in the morning in bed in pain, it's dislocated. The collapsing, difficulty walking, that was on and off for decades. And so eventually I would be diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, the hypermobility form. It's also the one that doesn't run in families, and I can't pass it on. It's just one of those things that hit you randomly. The Ehlers-Danlos Society puts out its criteria for doctors, and I was kind of researching every now and then, to something popped up, and I went to talk to my doctor, and she's like, I don't think so. And I said, okay, but next time I'm gonna look more into it. And I'm like, but this criteria is me, let's look into it. And she's looking, yeah, that is you. And then eventually kind of goes on. She says, I'm gonna pass it over to this guy and this doctor, and I start seeing a lot of doctors, and they're all doing these tests. So I'll just kind of give you some of the tests. Like most people could do 1 or 2 of these things. Most people can touch their toes. All right, I can put my flat hands on the ground with my legs straight. That would be one of them. Being able to wrap around your wrist past your thumb. That's another. Little things. But mainly, I'll show you what the issue is. It's a problem with collagen. This I've had since I was a kid. Never thought anything of it. But I have no collagen in my skin. I have very little collagen in my ligaments. Collagen is involved in blood vessels, which is pretty important, especially when it comes to temperature. So, if it's hot out, your blood vessels are supposed to dilate from elastin. When it's cold out, they're supposed to constrict from collagen. So, there's a 2-pronged process. And the reason is because it's hot, you need more oxygen. When it's cold, you need less. And so it's a matter of controlling the flow of oxygenated blood. But basically what happens is the lower brain, or the higher brain, which is your intellect, midbrain, which is the connections to your motor, functions. And there's lower brain, it's very primitive. And a lot of the neurons in there are what's called electrically coupled. They're not chemically coupled like most of the rest of the neurons. They're electrically coupled. They will not be shut off with chemicals. You have to send, the signal has to be shut off by shorting it out. So the lower brain sends the signal, job's done, comes back, shorts out the signal. So that's what it is for the primitive bodily functions like heart rate and breathing and blood vessel dilation. So the lower brainstem sending these signals for the blood vessels. It's cold, it's getting kind of mild cold, like 60s, 50s, so we just kind of constrict the blood vessels a little bit, and the message doesn't come back. So it sends it again, and it sends it again, and because it's a very primitive part of the brain, it keeps amplifying the signal more and more and more until the signal comes across, and when it finally is strong enough, the blood vessels slam shut. It's called a vasospasm. When it happens in the fingers, not so big deal. When it happens in the brain, you don't get oxygenated blood to the brain, and the neurons die. And sometimes you could pass out because that's the body's next mechanism to make you fall on the ground so that gravity, it's not as hard to pump blood to your brain. You can get it out of your feet by just knocking the guy on the ground. So, and then the vasospasms don't last very long. They pop open, and then all of a sudden you go to MRI and blood's flowing normally. You didn't have a stroke because they happen, they close, and they do it. So it's that in-between temperature is really bad because it doesn't, there's only extremes for my blood vessels. They're really wide or they're really tight. And so those middle between temperatures, and when they're confused, like when it's raining, that's when it really gets bad, particularly with the brain. So yeah, so that's that. So let me just kind of say that's the reason why eventually we had to move to the mildest climate we could find, because in the end, the last few years we were up in Ohio, it was out of control. I barely could even get up to walk half the time. Today I'm on a few meds that are really seeming to stabilize things for the most part. I'm on an anti-inflammatory of the brain, an over-counter anti-inflammatory for the rest of the body because the inflammation can make this worse too. So you got to keep it good. And plus, every time you get that vasospasm, you're pretty much, if it lasts long enough, you're killing brain cells. So you got to keep that inflammation down, or it starts a chain reaction, which was what was happening in California. And then a medicine it's really good for the blood vessels. It kind of keeps them in a stable equilibrium, nothing too extreme. The only downside is when it gets hot, like in here in Florida in the summer, it can have the negative effect. And that happened this summer at church. I'm just playing music. I'm a music director at my church. I'm playing, and all of a sudden, like, everything went black. And I stopped playing in the middle of the whole mess. I mean, they kept singing, but there was no music. And I'm like, then I come to, and they're like, what happened? But the church knows. They're aware of the situation. I said, just keep the air conditioner on. Don't go cheap on me if you start shutting the air conditioner on. It's going to be bad. And no more sports, You sprain an ankle, you can damage blood vessels, and it's not good. So a garden, not really a big concern about hurting anything when I'm gardening, because I take it slow and I can take breaks when I want. Next, instability is the most dangerous thing for this, particularly C1, C2, that I don't remember what they're called, axial and something else, because there's all these arteries that go to your brain in that area, and if that gets destabilized, and I believe they say it was the C3 that was really loose for a while there, and I'm like, I think it's C1, C2. I was very concerned for a while, but I came up some really neat exercises, and that's the thing. I just got to keep it strong, and I'll be good. And it has been a lot better since here in Florida. So things are stabilizing in this regard. So how do I unpack all this? You get some really extreme challenges in life, and you get some really extreme gifts. My wife, my son, my kids, unbelievable gifts. Well, you get some extreme challenges along with it. I think of it as this, and you guys can work it out with me, but God loves all of his creations, even the devil, even serial killers. He loves all his creations, the scripture says. He likes other people. He likes what they're doing. But he gives you a handicapped kid. I see that. God respects me. Because who else would you give a kid like that to? Unless it's a different level. And that's what I hold on to. Or maybe I'm just overthinking things.
Good, Jeff.
Yeah.
Wow. The thing that struck me the most was something you said about suicides. You said in your theology, suicides are not forgiven. I don't agree with that. I know some people who have committed suicide, and there's nothing in Scripture that says that they automatically can't go to heaven. Now, the only unforgivable sin is blasphemy of the Holy Spirit.
You're right.
So that's
right.
where I would go with that. But
I want to respond to that. I think of it a different way actually too, because I've had a number of friends commit suicide, and I don't believe that they are in hell. I believe, and Scripture doesn't say that. I just know that I was. I saw it, I experienced it, and I came back and forth multiple times. Now, maybe there was a lot that was going on. Maybe it's my attitude, and I don't really know. Somebody had said my description of it, and I don't want to get into it now, is it looked like a certain level of Dante's Inferno. I have never read Dante's Inferno, but there was the description that it was very similar to that. I think it for me it looks like this, and I know when I say this is kind of give hope. There were things that happened in my life were very odd, where like it was almost like God was reconstructing my life and changing even reality around it as though I didn't die. And I do believe that is what happened. That's where I'm now. But I also believe it very could be that case for other people. We don't know what kind of simulation God might be able to create for people to give them a second chance. I know that the turmoil that was in my head at the time was not good and normal, and I don't know how you'd wake up in heaven and all of a sudden be thinking clearly. Because the people who I've read a lot about near-death experiences, the thought process is pretty consistent from when
Or
they're
coming back from death experiences.
This is probably the most interesting, because the weirdest stuff I saw was when I came back. It wasn't there. That was bizarre, but it was the stuff I saw when I came back of this world. That was the most confusing. But anyway, I'm with you, Greg. I don't believe that, and I think we're gonna have a talk with Andrus, and I'm not gonna bring up the religion, but I think that there's multiple different types of suicide. This was a medicine.
Well, I mean,
it changed the way I thought. I mean, I was not in control of that situation. I don't care what anyone says. I don't. It probably wasn't suicide. Maybe it wasn't. So maybe it wasn't fair to say that.
I just wonder, that there's suicide's one thing and possession is another.
Yes.
And I don't know. Sometimes they go hand in hand. Sometimes people
Yes.
commit suicide because they're possessed by something.
Yes.
And so I don't know if that was the case for you, if you didn't mention that. So
I
don't
didn't
know.
feel it. I
But-
was conscious at all times, but that there's,
Okay.
like I said, I think there's a couple different things. I mean, they gave me a chemical to shut down that part of the brain. That's what it's known for doing. Self-preservation is that, if you got to have a healthy sense of self-preservation at all time. Otherwise, I don't know. All I don't like to say is that I've never thought that way before I took that medicine, and I was quick to get off it as soon as I could, and never thought that way since. So I don't. It's not me. So it
Yeah,
wasn't
it's
me.
medicine.
And I'm convinced. And so I think there's a couple different. I think there's some people that commit suicide because of they're sad and lost and they don't want to bear the pain. I think there's suicide where they're guilty. They're ready to get caught for some crime. There's other people who it's a medicine, and there are other people like my friend Tim, who basically just drank himself to death. He killed himself, but I don't think it was intentional. He just wanted more alcohol. So there's a couple different ways, but that's kind of the best way. I agree with you. I do not believe that suicide directly would lead to hell, but I think that for me, this is the best way I can describe it, and I think this is probably the way I think of hell. Is I didn't want to leave. That was the thing. That's weird.
You
I
didn't
did
want to
not
leave
want to leave
Earth,
hell.
or you didn't want
I
to leave
did
hell?
not want to leave hell.
Wow.
That was the mentality when I was there. I did not want to leave. I came to, the paramedics brought me to a couple times, and I was in and out about 3 or 4 times, and every time I'd see them, I'd be like, oh, nope. And I'd go back, and I would be back in that hell or whatever you call it. I don't know what else to call it. It wasn't a dream, because I don't know how you keep going back in a dream. It was some form of consciousness. That's all I know. I did not want to wake up. I did not want to come out of that place. That is the odd thing that's hard for me to explain, and I don't have a good answer for that. Just that's the way I was thinking. So I do believe that maybe there's some people that just, they want to be there. I don't know, or they want to be alone, and I was alone there. It was not hot. It wasn't fire and brimstone. It was cold and damp and miserable and black and bugs crawling on me, spiders. And could barely move, and just imagine a guy, a homeless person laying in a mud puddle at night. That's the best way I could represent it. So
Doesn't sound good.
no, it's not a pleasant thing. So it's not very good. So I want to. Only reason I bring it up is because people, they should have a healthy sense of the bad things that come from suicide. If at the very least, how selfish it is, for one, and two, how much damage it does to the people around you. My friend, he found his brother hanging. And it's just, that's horrible. It messes with people up. The person eventually is going to find you. So that's the only reason I bring it up.
Did you have those thoughts when you were suicidal yourself? Were you thinking, I'm not going to do it because I would affect everybody else, or you were just too far?
No,
down
it was
to think that
like
thought?
it was like, I mean, it was a psychotropic drug. I mean, that prescribed by a doctor, but it was changing the way I thought. I was happy waking up in the morning, go, cool, I'm gonna go to church, and I'm gonna go to confession. And I'm
Audio edit.
It's not a normal. Mine was drug induced. It was not normal, like sad thinking. It was completely different. I was not sad. I was not depressed. I certainly didn't have that that thinking the day before. But as soon as that medicine kicked in, it was like my thinking was different, and that's the best way I can say it. I mean, it was so common. There have been many lawsuits against this medicine. It probably, I mean, it may be beneficial for somebody that really has a problem with that, you know, with those nerves. But you shut them down, I mean, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the, you know, the thinking is. So anyway, yeah.
I had a period in my life when I guess I'll talk about it later, when I had those thoughts. Not
Okay.
drug induced, just for different reasons completely. But so I just, yeah, I mean, I empathize with it.
Yeah. Well,
Also, I just change the subject. You'd mentioned Irma Bombeck,
mhm.
and that's like when you did that, just this wave of memories came over me because I'm a little older than you, and when my mom, you know, when I was growing up, my mom read Irma Bombeck like the Bible. I mean, she read it daily, and I read it too because, you know, because she did. It's
Her
just
books
what
are
you do
all
when
her
you're a
little,
kid.
her magazine writings. She wrote forever.
So I
Red Book
loved
and
her
everything.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was mostly humor, but once in a while
Yeah.
she'd really zing you with something,
Yeah.
you know, serious.
Yeah.
And that was what we loved about it, you know. But yeah,
No, she's a very
memories.
good writer.
I don't know if anybody else has that. You have to be old to remember her.
I honestly, I started reading her after I found or heard about this poem.
Well, that was interesting to hear all that. As you know, there was a little bit of a gap in our relationship. I mean, we've always been friends, but you know, it's only, I think, after we both left California, I never heard too much details. I think we just kept, I mean, obviously in contact, but I would never share too much. Just our paths diverged, but it was interesting to hear that. And sorry you went through it. I think a lot of us creative types go through that, and I think it's almost a rite of passage, unfortunately. But yeah, everybody's got this road that they walk, and yeah, it was enlightening. I'm both sorry and glad that you're, you know, but you wouldn't be here today. And none of us would be if it weren't for whatever we've all went through. We're a totality of our experiences.
Yeah.
So, but it was cool to hear yours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I learned
Yeah.
a lot of things I didn't know about you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Probably I said it's stuff in there Brian didn't know about me. But here's my thought, Palmer, with you is a lot of times you would be calling and asking, you know, well, what do you think happened there? And I wasn't ready. I didn't know, you know. It was kind of still forming. It took a long time to really go back and look at it. And the best way I can describe it now, decades later, was, well, there was the spiritual thing going on, there was the mind thing going on, there was the body going thing. First started with my health going down. Oh, actually, no, probably first was spirituality, because I hadn't gone to church 2 years. I did, you know, and I was very close with my spirituality. And now other people may be perfectly fine in there, you know, not going to church, but it was a part of me. And so I was losing a lot of things that were part of me. I wasn't being myself in the first place. You know, the job I was out there, I was not myself. I'm in a corporate job, and I'm like, no, I'm a musician. I'm an artist. I need to be, I need to be in a different mindset and different day-to-day activity. So I was not being myself. That was the biggest issue. When you're not yourself, I mean, your body's going to get confused.
relate.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
Like the emoji or the image I sent on that group text. That was the image of a guy waking up on a Monday, his alarm going off. He's like, I don't want to go to work. I hate my job. I've been through that when I worked for good old corporate America. When I drove a tractor trailer, I found myself pulling in, looking at the building, going, I hate this place. And several times I've turned the vehicle around and go home, give him an excuse. Well, one time it was kind of funny. I got out of my truck, my personal truck, and I looked down and I'm in sandals, sleepwalking, basically going to work. Oh my God, we're supposed to be wearing boots. I'm in sandals. And I was like, I'm in sandals. I'm going home. And that was, I think you were still in Arizona at the time. I think we may have even been renting that house. But I know for me, working at the last trucking company I worked for, I'm pulling all the time, and I'm like, I don't want to be here, and it makes me miserable. And the tractor trailer, there was an issue in a magazine tractor trailer drivers, CDL drivers, have one of the highest rates of depression, suicide. And I think it's because you're in your truck all day long. You know, for a lot of years we could talk on the phone. Like, you can't talk on the phone anymore; it's not safe. But then you basically just drove down the road, getting flipped off in your own head. And yeah, we still talked on the phone, but you weren't supposed to. It's never really had any suicidal thoughts deep in those years, but recently, post COVID, it's almost hard to find somebody who hasn't had that cross their mind.
Or know somebody.
Well,
Right.
I think Bob Dylan said it best when he said, "One should never be where one does not belong." I think it's pretty much essentially what it is. Well, what I was just saying, part of, if you need to do everything you can in your power through free will and agency to put yourself where you belong. So, and we've been given that power through higher power and through the rights we have in this country.
So it brings
But
up.
again, that's just my take on it.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's right. It brought up something where I was thinking, like, could you imagine being in some sort of Soviet Union or something like that, where you were assigned your job and you couldn't quit? You have to do it. Like here, I mean, I have had, like, if I look over from high school to now, like 30 some different jobs, and I think that the communists would have a hard time assigning a profession to me. I would not be happy with one. I like music. I'm very happy with my job now, playing music, but I don't know. Maybe 5 years from now, I don't want to do it. It's very. I like that. I think if anything could be said for capitalism, the biggest thing is you have the freedom to quit your job if you don't like it. So
what do they do in the Soviet Union if you don't want to? Drive a truck anymore? They lock you up.
I don't think it would be good. We'll ask Andres when he gets on, because he grew up in the Soviet Union. I mean,
okay.
Maybe you guys know Greg.
Whether they physically went to work or not, they didn't have their hearts in it if they didn't like it, and that was like 99% of the economy, unfortunately.
I think they would just give you something else to do that's close.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
it's not like they off you. If you don't drive the truck, you get off by the KGB or something. That's not exactly how it works either, I wouldn't think.
No, I do know that the farmers, they were very upset when capitalism came to, I know for one country, they were very upset because they had to work for once. they did. During the Soviet Union, they didn't have to work as hard. It was absolutely, that is what they all say. So it was like kind of like capitalism goes, it was like, crap, I mean, I got to produce. And they didn't like it. So, I mean, there was like a big alcoholism problem in there with the farmers in the Soviet Union, and then maybe that was the way to drown it out.
But work is a way to drown that out, Jeff. Yeah. Work is a cure for a lot of problems. Psychological problems. You just go to work, and problems. I don't say they go away, but they lessen. They just, time heals them.
Yes. Here. Yes, that was exactly my point with the math. I mean, you're going ahead. It was work. I mean, it's a focus, brainstorm, creativity, walk away when you're not getting anywhere. I mean, it was work. It's just, it was different. It wasn't, it's not. I mean, I've had other jobs where a boss is yelling at you. This is a big difference. There's.
Ryan said something that really also stuck out at me a while ago. He said that truck drivers are more likely than most people, I guess, to commit suicide. Is that what you said?
Yeah, I think it was in a magazine. It was highest. That industry has the highest rate of depression, I believe.
It's because they're alone. The reason that struck me is my uncle, who was literally halfway between my mom and me. He was so much younger than my mom. He died. He had a farm. Kind of a long story on that. He bought it at exactly the wrong time in the late 70s and used his inheritance to get it, and then lost it, and had a divorce, and some really bad things happened. And he took up truck driving, and we found him at age 52,
Audio edit.
Mississippi. There's no indication that he committed suicide, but I always wondered. And he was such a cool guy. I mean, he was like the life of the party, you know, kind of guy. And yeah, so when you said that, it just, yeah, it really hit me. That may
Yeah,
be true.
we had, you know, I did it for 20 years. I got my CDL so I could have a job anywhere when I got to where I was going, and that was Arizona. Jeff and Palmer Frank and many others were out here in Arizona, and I was like, all right, I'm getting my CDL, I'm getting out of here, I'll get a job when I get there, and then I'll figure out what I'm gonna do with my life. Blank. 20 years later. But during my last job I worked was for Kroger. It's Fry's out here. It's their largest facility in the country, the largest warehouse, and so they had in the hallway, on the way from the driver's room to the coffee pot or the offices, whatever, there, pictures of everyone on the wall that had died. And I'm always joking. And I was like, well, this is terrible, man. This guy retired 6 months ago. This guy 2 years ago. It's like the wall of shame. I'm like, I can't believe you put pictures of everybody who has died on the wall. Like, where's the guy that retired and he's in his boat fishing? You know, where's the guy who lost 30 pounds when he got out of the truck? Because there are those guys.
Yeah.
And eventually they took it down because we were giving it grief. You know, we were like, hey, look, this guy got cancer, so, you know, he retired. He quit.
Not very motivating.
Yeah.
It's just a form of
Great
propaganda.
retirement package.
Yeah. Give me an extra load. And what's funny is they always try to get you to work 70 hours a week. And, you know, my wife at the time was going through medical school, and I'm always a stickler for rules. Everyone always thought, growing up or even now as an adult, you don't like rules. I'm like, I love them because those are the ones I'm going to follow, and I'm going to hold you to them. We only had to work 40 hours a week because we're a union, but they wanted us to work 70. So they're like, hey, you can work up, we can work you 70. No, I can work up to 70, but I'm tired and going home. And then it was like a trick to get you to work. Hey, you're single. This guy's got a family. He wants to go home. So can you do this run? And then when I got married, it's like, hey, you got kids and a wife to support. And I told him, I'm pretty sure when I'm on my deathbed, I'm not going to lean forward and go, oh, I wish I would have worked more. So you got to have a balance in life for your mental well-being. Right now, I want to work as much as I can because I'm living in a van down by the river. But, this is going to be hopefully a good real estate year, and I'm trying to build a home on 5 acres. But I'm not taking this sacrifice living in an RV right now for, I don't know, could be a couple of years, because I want to continue to work like crazy or suffer. I want to try to, maybe do a cash build. If it takes me 12 years to save up money and build, I'll be 60 with owning land, a well, a house. The way inflation's going, if I had all that paid off right now, taxes, I'd almost have to go to work just to pay taxes on a property, that big. But yeah, it's a balance. It's a balance. Much as I'd love to say I'm going to work the next 7 days, you got to take a day off here and there. You just have to. This is my day off today. And I did a report this morning. But
yeah, it sounded like you're working. We were starting our calls.
Yeah. A little late. Thanks.
It's I gotta work.
Yeah, I know.
I was on a roll last night with it. It was an easy home, but these guys wouldn't get out of it. I had to do what I had to do. It's hard to wake up in a cold RV and get going. I'm doing everything I can to save dollars. So sleep with an electric blanket. You turn the heat on in the morning. When it gets hot, you get out of bed. Okay. So my electricity bill is like $27. So I'm willing to put myself through some suffering now to be comfortable later. I'm fortunate that the inspection was yesterday on a Sunday, so I wouldn't be here at all. And look, I got a collared shirt out of this little.
Nice.
Hey, all right.
Sure. Well, just my thoughts are random. You mentioned that you have no cartilage. And,
No, I do. I
you
do
can
have
move
cartilage.
your
It's
thumbs
just-
back and forth.
Yeah, so yeah, my finger is pretty much.
As far as I quit basketball, was my thumbs kept on jamming every time.
Yeah, I don't
would
have
happen
that
about the
problem.
weekend of the season, I would grab somebody send me a pass, and I'd grab it and would jam it into my thumb, and I'd have to spend the whole rest of the season with my thumbs taped up every year for about 4 years. And
There
I
were a
finally
lot
said,
of little
"Forget
weird
it. I'm not
things."
doing that anymore.
No, there were a lot of little
I don't
weird
care if I'm
things
tall.
as I look back. Like I could do the splits in junior high. That's not normal for most boys, right?
Interesting.
A lot of things I never thought about, but there's like other weird things that happen too. It's all part of the criteria is you get stretch marks for no reason in different parts of your body. That's a weird one. I don't like that. So it's not to the point where it's, I mean, I'm not going to be posing, in the nude anytime soon, so I don't care. But it's not something
Thank
that it's not something that is very visible. Yeah.
I don't know why my siblings always find a way to refresh and bring up memories I was able to block out. But
Me posing in the nude? No, I'm just kidding.
Michelle doesn't do
But
it.
you've probably seen them.
I was never an altar boy, but what the heck happened in our church?
Yeah,
I mean,
there wasn't a lot. I heard about it from my friend. I never knew what was going on. So here's the closest I got to it is all my friends kind of went downhill mentally, and I didn't know what was going on. They all turned into like I mean, our teacher at the time, she got shipped away to the psych ward. So there was like this bad spirit that just went through everything. But what I do know is an altar boy. Well, I'll tell you how the guy did it. So there was a and this is not to expose. I mean, they made a movie about it. You can go watch the documentary. I mean, it's by a Hollywood producer.
About your church.
Yeah, it's called Twist of Faith.
Wow.
Twist of Faith.
I mean, I knew got busted.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, so it wasn't. It's by a famous director. It's obviously it's not shining a very positive light on the Catholic Church or my parish, but I can tell you that my parish has done a lot of things after that, and they did the right things. I'm not saying that they did the right things when I was a kid. The best thing, let me just explain what was happening. All right, so the priest come up to me after, I was an altar boy, he'd come up to me after, and I know this is the way his tactic was. And he'd be like, hey, I got this lake house, and I just have some boys over, and I got beer in the fridge, but I don't let anyone drink that. But I got soda. I'm like, why'd you just say beer in the fridge? I'm looking at him like I knew something was wrong. And I was like 7th grade or something like that. I knew something was wrong. I could felt the creeper in him. But I didn't know, I didn't have it. Like the thing that bothered me the most was thinking about a bunch of 7th or 8th grade boys drinking alcohol. I'm like, what could go wrong? I don't want to be in that environment. I was more nervous about those boys than I was with him. But there was something that triggered it. Now, when I stopped being an altar boy, the office called me to schedule me, and I said, "Nah, I'm in high school now. I think I'm done." And she's like, she was poking. She's like, "Well, what happened?" This kind of like she knew, She's like trying to go, "No, nothing happened. I'm in high school, and it was something I did in grade school, and I don't want to do it anymore." She's like, "Nothing happened to you, sure?" So I think she was getting stories. The church started to learn it. And he got the boot. So I mean, they cemented in the tunnel under the church and doused it in 5 gallons of holy water. Brought in an exorcist. They established a perpetual adoration chapel. There's somebody praying in that church 24/7 for decades. I mean, they are totally on spiritual guard. If even some pedo would come in there, priest, and I even slightly look at it, a boy or a girl, there'd be 30 people surround him and go, "What you looking at?" Nothing. Let's show you the door. They're all on guard for it. When I went and talked to my pastor, who I really love very much, he's not there anymore, and I'm not there anymore. But I kind of like to go in and because he's a new priest, and I want to feel it out, see if they're a good person or not. This guy was a saint. And I say, hey, you know the history here, and just want to let you know those are my friends, and they're not in the church anymore. They're not coming back for understandable reasons. I said, I'm here, I'm back. It didn't happen to me, and all he's doing is apologizing. I'm sorry. He's like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, no, I didn't. It's cool, but he was not afraid to apologize for the church personally. He felt he was representing it, and the problem I think in the '80s is they weren't apologizing for the things. I think they've gotten better at it. My parish particularly, that problem is solved. It's just the way people perceive it. Obviously, there is something unique with Catholic priests is that they don't marry, and I understand that. But neither did St. Paul. I mean, that was his thing. He said it's better to not marry if you can avoid it. So it's not, but there is that perception, but statistically it's not. And so then I have like my aunt or somebody who's not Catholic, they say, well, the problem is the cover up. And I said, I'm not covering it up. So why should I, what's that have to do with me? So some creeper covers it up. That's their problem. It has nothing to do with me. And that's the only thing. It's like there are problems. But I can tell you, give me any organization that's, how many thousands of years old too, that doesn't have, hasn't been infiltrated one way or another. They have been infiltrated. If you're looking for that, you're going to go. I mean, there was a guy who ran a video arcade when we were growing up. You guys, Palmer, Brian, you remember the Red Baron in Southwick Mall?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, the guy got busted. He had boys living, handicapped boys living with them. Yeah, so. Yeah, he tried to get me in the back office with them to show me some artwork or something like that too. So they go where there's going to be kids and where there'll be a trusted figure.
I think the rumor was that they wanted the Tron machine would lift up, and there was an actual door that went down to a dungeon.
Really? Well, I do know for a fact. I do know for a fact.
I made that actually. I just made that up. I just had to
Okay,
insert
sorry.
some inappropriate jokes. I just figured it was time.
Well, then,
Well, it doesn't surprise me. There really was a tunnel under our church. I mean, these
I'm
really
totally
was?
kidding.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
totally
Well, it went for the wall. Hold on, Palmer. It went to the Walcott house. It went underground. It was from the underground slave trade.
Yeah, that's the
or
Underground Railroad.
Underground Railroad. So so what happens? Southerners would come up north. They bring their slaves and they go to church, and then they'd slip them out under the basement of the church, get them over to the courthouse, and get them out. While this priest was doing stuff in there. So they sealed it up. I mean, but
they just hit the
Tunnels are not good.
no, nothing good.
A lot going on today. Just related
I
to
know.
tunnels.
We'll get to tunnels one day. All right, sorry, Palmer. You were saying.
I was just saying the joke would have been more poignant if I would have said it was the Dig Dug machine.
Dig Dug. Yes, that would have been very appropriate.
Yeah, it would have been a little bit more funny. I wasn't quick enough on my feet.
Nah.